I'll start over here. This is Laura Warren Gross, and she works at the Kalamazoo Public School, a magnet school.
Middle school,
And middle school, 6th through 8th graders. And Patsy Richardson also works for Kalamazoo Public Schools. And you're pretty acquisitions and cataloging for the whole district. So she works for the whole district. And, oh my gosh, Stuart. I'm sorry, he's in charge of teen services here at Kalamazoo Public Library. And I apologize, Stuart. And Brandy Archer is a content literacy consultant for the Michigan Department of Education. And I met Brandy at the MAME Conference last year, and she came and spoke to us, so I asked her to come. And Kristen Raminar, and she works for the Orion District Public Library. Is that
the Orion Township Public Library.
Sorry. And then Melissa Middleton works for Lake Orion High School. So, and I think the session is going to be somewhat informal, where they're going to want you to go ahead and ask questions and things like that. But I will let them sort of tell you more about that. And Sue wanted to say a few things.
I have a soft voice, so I'm going to use the mic here. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with some others in the state on this main conference. I hope that you have a great conference for the rest of the time that you're here. We're really glad that you're here at Kalamazoo Public Library. I hope that if you have a few minutes before you have to leave this afternoon, that you'll take a minute to walk through our building. Our children's room is on the main floor, and our teen services area is down in the lower level. And they're both really cool areas, and they're worth a look. We're doing a little renovation in the building right now, so if you hear some banging, don't be frightened. It's just our friendly contractors who have been here helping us with a couple of projects, including one in the children's room that we think is pretty cool. So take a second if you've got a second, and look through. You know, real early last year, maybe late winter, early spring, I kept hearing more and more about Common Core, and I kept reading articles in the professional literature about Common Core. And at some point I said to myself, well, this is really interesting, but there's a whole lot I don't know about Common Core. So the first thing I did was to call up my friend Patsy Richardson at Kalamazoo Public Schools, because Patsy knows everything about school libraries as far as I'm concerned. So I said to Patsy, oh, Patsy, we need to get together and have lunch again, because I need you to tell me about Common Core. So she very generously gave me some really good information from her perspective on Common Core. And me taking what she gave me, putting it together with the things I was reading in the literature, it kind of completed that circle of me understanding not only what Common Core was, but what my role was in Common Core. And from there on, I started seeking out other opportunities to learn more. And one of the most helpful things I saw was a webinar that School Library Journal did back in April. And some of you may have seen that as well. But that was such a good introduction to me. And there were a couple of points made that I just wanted to say to start us off here this morning. One of the first things that I ever heard about Common Core, and this was before the School Library Journal webinar, I heard someone say in another webinar, public libraries are the Common Core, meaning that the collections that public libraries have are broad and deep, and we have access to wonderful nonfiction. So in a very simplistic way, they were saying, you know, we've kind of already got many of the resources we need in a community at the public library. So we need to make sure that our public librarians and our school librarians are talking to each other. So that made an impact on me. One of the things that came up in the School Library Journal webinar was that public libraries are always in a position of responding to the needs of a community. And our community includes our schools. And so if our schools are deeply involved in Common Core preparation, then we need to be knowledgeable about that as well, because we need to respond to that segment of our community. We need to be able to help the students in our community find the resources that we need. So we need to be familiar with the Common Core language, which is a language completely different from what public libraries generally use. So we need that language so that when children come to us using the language that their teachers are giving them, we need to be able to understand this. So we need to speak the same language that everyone else is speaking about Common Core. We need to find mutually beneficial strategies that we can use between our schools and our public libraries. And we need to, most importantly, find the ways that we can build lines of communication between school libraries and public libraries. And in some communities, those lines of communication are very, very strong and vibrant. In other communities, they are simply non-existent. And for, of course, there's the middle ground. So I would like to see us all get to the point of having strong and vibrant and workable relationships between our school librarians and our public librarians. And so I'm hoping that some of the examples you'll hear about this morning from our panel will help you go back to your communities and create strong, helpful associations between school and public librarians. So to get us started this morning, we have got Randy Archer. She is graciously come to us from Michigan Department of Education to share some really good resources. So, thank you.
All right. It is great to be here this morning. I'm going to use the microphone too. My colleague that I present with always says my voice travels about this far, so hopefully this will help. I brought a lot of resources to share today, and what you have in front of you in that orange sheet is from me. We're going to play a little game because I thought, how am I going to share all these resources and not have everyone fall asleep on me? And because I want to make sure that I'm giving you some things that will be helpful. So you have a word bank at the top of your bingo sheet, and I want you to choose some of the things that are of most interest to you, or whatever it takes to fill in your little bingo squares. And then you keep track of what I hit on. And when you yell bingo, I will give you this beautiful Wilbur buck. How many of you know Wilbur, my good friend? So this was a reminder. We gave these out at a presentation we did at the Michigan Reading Association, and they were able to earn a Wilbur buck, but this is my reminder to promote Michigan Reads. So you'll get a Wilbur buck, write your name on the back of the Wilbur buck, and then I'll take all of them at the end, and I have a prize of candy, chocolate, and a $10 iTunes card. So you can win a prize this morning. That seems to work with the crowd. My love for libraries goes back to my childhood, of course, but my children have grown up in the Heartland Pro-Maine Library, and it has been a resource of just enormous wealth for our family. My son, actually, I call the librarian his girlfriend. We get phone calls home where she has said, Joshua, I have this book that you requested, it's in, and it's on hold for you. Like, that's the level we're at with our library. So when I moved to the Michigan Department of Education, I made fast friends with our state library, which is part of the Department of Ed, and I have great colleagues there. So we're trying to do as much collaboration between our curriculum instruction unit and our libraries so that we can make sure we're partnering and getting the information together. Another piece, just for your information, this learning about the Common Core is so important for our public and our school libraries because so many of your positions as school librarians have been cut in schools and in working with our priority schools where our students have the highest need, and there's not that extra support for doing some of the things I'm going to talk about today, like building text sets and getting those resources and articles in front of kids that are relevant to them. There's really kind of a hole there for a lot of our neediest kids. And when we suggest to those schools to reach out to their libraries, like a light goes on. And then it's the hard job of making those connections. And we just keep reassuring them. Your public librarians want to partner with you. Like, go ask them, call them. And if we can have the libraries do the same, sometimes those teachers are so overwhelmed in their work that's just a godsend for them. So to keep that in mind, and we really do see that. So hopefully you filled in your little board. Anytime you have a question for me or something's unclear, you need me to repeat something, please let me know. I speak quickly. I apologize in advance. So I did not prepare any slides. We're going to go actually find some resources, and I'm going to try to give them to you in an order that makes sense in my brain. I apologize if that doesn't make sense for you. All right, so the first one we're going to go to, and if you want to, you have an iPad or a smartphone and want to follow along, I will not be offended if you do that. So if I can figure out how to work this sucker. The first one, the address is, and if you are going to the conference tomorrow, I have a session. I'm going to go further into some of these resources. And I have on Edmodo, I have posted QR codes for the resources I'm going to share with you and a PowerPoint that would direct you to those. So if that is helpful, use it. All right, so this one is www.micccss.org. This is amazing. Our ISDs got together and said we need some resources for teachers about these Common Core. I did something wrong. All right, so our ISDs got together. If you've heard of MESA, that's the Michigan Association of Intermediate School Administrators, and that group got together and said we need resources around this Common Core, this first level. So if you're at ground zero with Common Core, this website is for you. If you have to do PD with teachers or staff members, this website is amazing. So let me show you. We'll go to ELA. There's ELA and MAME. So once you get into the ELA resources, let me get rid of this. You'll see that there's all of these sessions. The instructional shifts. How many of you have heard the language shifts? They're making it easy. We're narrowed it down to 3 shifts. We'll go into that one in a minute. Standards and structure. The text complexity. How many of you have heard that big buzzword? Text complexity. It's all the rage. I've got a whole website for that one. The writing standards. The speaking and listening, and then all about smarter balanced assessment. So right now in our state, the assessment is a big snafu. What's going on? What's going to happen? We're hoping smarter balanced. We're working on it at the state to keep smarter balanced. It's amazing. And guess what? If we don't go smarter balanced, the types of questions that are on smarter balanced is where everybody's headed. So we're going to get that same great information no matter what happens. That's what we're pushing for. So let's go into the shifts. So what they've done is all of these are streamlined to be the same. In every session, there's a sign-in sheet and a reflection sheet that stay the same. And in fact, if you started with session 1 and pulled up that reflection sheet, you could walk a staff through all of the modules, having them reflect each time. It just builds on itself with that same sheet. And then there's the PowerPoint. Eventually, I'm not sure if it's done now yet. It's been a month since I saw this. This rolled out in the fall Bureau of Assessment and Accountability conferences, so it's very, very new. But they did a voiceover of the presentations too. So if you wanted to like flip it and have your colleagues watch this before your actual meeting, you could do that. It's all voiced over. If you want to do it yourself, it has all of the notes at the bottom to kind of outline the thinking of what that would look like as an actual presentation. So it could be a self-learning or it could be a shared learning. So each of these PowerPoints looks pretty similar. Documents back to the Common Core actual pieces. And here we get to the shifts. And they've pulled these things from some of those common resources that are out there. Engage New York is a big one that has a lot of PowerPoints. CCSSO, where the standards kind of generated, they have a lot of information. Achieve, the core.org has a lot of information. And so this group has pulled from those kind of very similar places without recreating the wheel. So you'll see it streamlined as you go from website to website. So here's the three shifts for ELA. I'm sticking ELA today. I just can't go math today. So balancing the informational literacy text, building knowledge through the disciplines. That's like that disciplinary literacy piece. Huge new buzzword out there. They kept the 6. Text-based answers. Writing from sources, that staircase of text complexity, and academic vocabulary. There's another team out there called Achieve, and they've kind of narrowed these down to 3 by combining, just thinking 3 was easier to memorize, but they're still the same gist of pieces where we're moving forward. And remember that we're moving in this direction because the ultimate goal is we want kids to be career and college ready. I don't have this up there. We can go to a website that does, but I can tell you 4 characteristics that we want kids to graduate. 4 characteristics that we can own from the littlest ages all the way up and across grade levels. And they are that kids can argue and reason, that they can use technology appropriately, that they can communicate and collaborate, and there's one that they can problem solve. So every time MD is out speaking or there's some curriculum instruction out speaking, we come back to those. That's really the goal, those 4 categories. And the standards help us to get there. So just scrolling through this. Again, this is just a general overview of the Common Core, that module. So tonight, you're bored, that'd be a good place to go to get you all beefed up on the Common Core. Any questions you have about this website in particular? Yeah.
You were presenting this to, I'm with Public Libraries.
Okay.
And we have our administrative team that includes all of our branch heads. So if you were presenting this, wanted to make just a quick, maybe 15-minute presentation on Common Core, would this be something that you would, that you could possibly?
You could do that. I think I would think, what are the most important things I want those folks to walk away with? And I think it would be the shifts. And I think it would be, so I think you could do that and kind of give a brief overview. There's also some really great community PowerPoints that are already done, showing just the general average Joe, be good for a parent or a business community partner. I can show you that as well, some of the places to get that. Because there was so much pushback on the Common Core, a lot of people did some really great work putting those messages together. Actually, I will show you this one right now. I didn't have it originally to show you, but it's such a wealth of knowledge, I can't not. All right, achieve the core dot, I'm gonna go com. I bet it's org, we'll see. It's .org. No, it's not. They change it. This site has these people I've met, and they are young, and they are whippersnappers, and this stuff changes daily. Their website changes as they get feedback. So we'll go achieve the core. This site, and since it's changed since the last time I was here, which was like last week, I won't go through all of it, but this is where you'll find pieces for your community. Really great, really quick PowerPoints that explain what the Common Core is and what the Common Core isn't, and they embed some really cute videos about just illustrating what the progressions look like and the power of having standards that are consistent across states. So, and this group is very closely tied to CCSSO, which is again that group that helps drive the standards and pull them together. That's called the Council of Chief State School Officers, CCSSO. Good with my acronyms, aren't I? Learning, not always do I get them all right. Okay, so I've showed you myccss.org. I've showed you achievethecore.org. I hope you're checking off your little bingo sheet. And because we just saw those cool modules, that group did some other amazing work. And if we go, I have to Google this one. It's Open Access Kent ISD. And again, if you go on the Edmodo site, I have those QR codes. In fact, there's probably, I have some I'll hand out at the end. I was going to save them for tomorrow, but I'll make more. So this Open Access Kent ISD. There you see the MESA logo, because this group was, I think, funded through the MESA organization. And if you scroll down, you see these 3 boxes. So now we have the next generation science standards. Have any of you heard about those? Those are the science standards that would be similar to the Common Core. They connect the math, the ELA, the science, and then drive it to that career and college readiness level. So they have some modules on that. Mind you, the State Board of Education has not adopted the NGSS yet. So we still have the GLCEs. We still have our state standards for science. But if your teachers are interested and your librarians are interested in knowing the wave of the future science-wise, great stuff coming out with NGSS. It's worth a look, because that's probably the direction we're going. And so then there's some modules on that. But it's this one over here, this MESA Title I supplementary modules. This took, MESA also has ELA units. How many of you have heard about the MESA units? They are reading and writing workshop units that this group has also developed. Well, they wanted to add some more resources around that, so they put in some Title I resources, meaning students that are at risk, and put together some modules for how, like a parapro or a teacher or a parent support person could do lessons using those models with those struggling students. And so these are voiced over videos of lessons, which is very cool. Say you have tutors, I'm just thinking off the cuff, but you have tutors in your library, it would be really nice to share these lessons with them. And I think this is just for ELA, reading. All right, so we did My CCSS, Kent ISD, and Achieve the Core questions. All right. All right, how am I doing on time? I talk fast, yeah. Okay, so this next one is my probably biggest pride, and it's called Navigating Text Complexity. Let's see. This is a CCSSO. So part of my work at the Department of Ed, I get this fabulous, fabulous professional learning. I don't know if my bosses know that's what it is for me, but what happens is my counterpoints, parts from other states who are involved with this group come together. So all these ELA folks, and we work with Sue Pimentel, who was a lead writer on the ELA Common Core, which is very cool because if you have a question about the Common Core, she's got like the perspective that went into making it. So very cool to have that connection with her. And if any of you have questions like that, use me. I have contact to her. I can ask her questions. It's cool. So my group just started meeting in the last 3 years, and we said we're going to get together. It had better have some worth so that our bosses let us keep coming. And so we are thinking about those shifts and what we could do to help educators to tackle those shifts and understand them. And the biggest one we thought to start with would be this notion of text complexity. Wrapping your mind around that can give you an absolute headache if you're not in the world of navigating text complexity. Plus, in the Common Core, they changed the lexile levels, if you will, of where they're expecting kids to be reading at. Knowing that when we're in our real world lives as adults, the things that we're asked to read and maneuver, like tax documents, some of those higher level, even just news articles, Wall Street Journal, and things like that, that's really high level of text complexity. So how do we get kids to be able to access that if they don't have experience with it in the classroom? And there's a lot of pushback on, we have struggling readers. We hear that barrier all the time. We have kids who are in 6th grade and they cannot decode their words, and how do we even help them? And what ends up happening is, even in all of our great efforts, those kids end up being pulled out of the classroom, and we try to have them have their core teaching and get pulled out on top of that, but it doesn't always happen scheduling wise. So a lot of times those kids are in the classroom not being able to read. They've been assigned to read something without support, and they can't do it. So then when it comes time to have a conversation around that text, they can't do that either. So this notion of having progression and having a text set to get kids to move up to that level where they can read from it is kind of novel to teachers. And if you don't have a lot of time or resources or energy to figure out how to make it so your struggling reader can still interact, it's much easier to put them on a computer program or send them to another class or give them different work, which we know doesn't work, because if the kids are not engaged in that grade level material, they're not going to go forward. They're just always going to be trying to catch up. So this notion of text complexity is really important for our teachers, and I think it's really where our school librarians and our public librarians can support and help people to see that this is doable. So this website called Navigating Text Complexity, how many of you have seen this 3-colored triangle down here? So this piece is really saying, one part says, I can't even read it, I can bring my glasses, but one part says qualitative, one part says quantitative, and one part says reader and task. So it's what's the level of the book, what's specifically in that book that might be tricky for kids. Maybe it's how it's formatted, maybe it's the archaic language, maybe it's the topic. And then that reader and task, what do your students have to bring to that? You know, that whole thing, like if it's a book about a farm and you're an urban school, are we going to understand that? Do we need to give some information on that to get to the point where we're going to understand it? If it's baseball statistics and I could care less about baseball, then maybe I need a little bit of information around the vocabulary of baseball before I am ready to talk about statistics of baseball. So this notion of what is text complexity, and it goes through, they try to do like a cute little map thing with it. There's some videos on here about what it is, why it's important. Kansas did some great work with these placemats, if you will. We're calling them road maps here. Has anybody heard of these placemats? Basically what they did is took a book and they went through looking at those three pieces. What is the level of the book? What does the student have to bring to this? What are some qualitative features that I need to consider? And they wrote them up. So these are kind of like models, and there's several of them in there. There's actually quite a big group of these roadmaps growing. And they took, there's appendix B, I think, of the Common Core, where there's some text exemplars, things that there would be hoping kids would be reading. Not that they have to read those as a list. It's just a general understanding of what are some types of books that would be at those levels. Third grade level would be like this. So they took some of those books too, just because they knew teachers would be looking at them, and they made some of these examples. This is important, so I'll come back to this part. So they showed that showroom models. Take it for a spin. Here's an example, a video of teachers, I think, trying to make a roadmap. Scroll maybe. How do you use this in instruction? And then a whole bunch of additional resources. So another good place to get more if you're trying to pull something together. So when we were making those placemats or those roadmap pieces, we said it would really great if we could make those in text sets so that I could see a set of maybe 5 of those all on the same topic. My group and I worked on a Revolutionary War, and we were trying to think of it around like a 5th grade level. So we picked some books at a 2nd grade all the way up through an 11th grade level. Something that would give a range for struggling kids all the way up to those excelling kids. Because the notion is that if you're reading about, let's say, Revolutionary War at a 2nd grade level, you're gaining a little bit of understanding and you're gaining some of the vocabulary. And as you move through those increasingly difficult books, you are adding on them. But even in the lower level book, I can have a conversation with a partner who may have read a more difficult article and have a conversation about the American Revolution. So it's a way to progress kids, and it's a way to keep those grade level conversations going strong in the classroom, like a differentiation model. So the notion was to be able to put together text sets. And we have those on there, so it's populated a little bit, but we'd really like to add to it. So my charge before January, which is, wow, coming up quickly, before that meeting, to go with a Michigan text set, 1 or 2, whatever we could manage to pull together. So what I'm offering is if anybody is interested in doing this type of work, you find that super fun and you'd like to work with me on that, I'd like to be able to start some collaboration with our librarians, school or public, it doesn't matter to me. Anybody who's interested, and I'll take your name and number and then an address, and I will set up an Adobe Connect so that we can work together, and based on how many people, we'll shoot for how many text sets we can put together. So I'm just offering that collaboration. If you're interested, just let me know. A name and address would be awesome. So this is I'm very excited. It's very cool to go to something where you're learning and you produce something that you know educators can use. So that's my favorite site. Questions so far? Did you check off your bingo sheets at home? Does anybody have a bingo?
I have a bingo.
Hallelujah.
I have a question.
Yes, question. Do you have a bingo too?
No.
Oh, bingo. She's going to be a winner.
As you
Yes.
talk about leveling the books and thinking about the evaluating text in a different way, one of the things that we've experimented with, especially with our lower level books, is leveling them with a consistent
Scale?
a consistent system. We just use the accelerated reader because that's a level in schools and they're very familiar with it. And I as you're talking, I'm kind of wondering if there's another way going forward that we should think about that, especially as we get into, we're starting to move up with that and become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know where accelerated reader is with that, and if it's useful to your school, then it's probably useful in your library to keep that consistent. I do know for these placemats, we looked at Lexile, we looked at, there's more, you guys probably know the names of the other group, but we looked at 3 different places for those levels and made sure that, made sure it was consistent, and really based on what the qualitative was, sometimes those books changed where we thought they should go. But a lot of the ones I looked at were pretty much in that range. So, yeah, that's a great question. But I would say the schools are going to be, maybe that conversation with the school is a good in, too. Because to say, hey, we've always had this accelerated reader, does that really work? Because I'm thinking on their end, if they want to change that or if it needs to be changed, they will be making that shifts in where the kids are at. Sorry, that's not really an answer, but. Yes?
I guess, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to make a comment. One of the things I found in working with the schools and also collaborating with my public library is that to be very careful about text complexity and only looking at the quantitative piece, because some parents will come in and say, oh, my student is at this Lexile level or this, and they can only read this. And then that turns kids off of reading. Kids still need some choice.
Right.
And so I think that's someplace for public librarians and school librarians, because we know the books and we know the text, that we can kind of convince either the teacher or the parent who's nervous about that no, this book is still, at that level. It's just, got more complex themes, or, the settings are new to the student or things like that, so that they're not pigeonholed and not to the point where they hate reading because you're forcing them to only read this kind of text.
We definitely deal with those issues in my house. So I feel that the other buzzword you'll hear around Common Core is close reading. This notion of, some things are worth rereading and reading again and talking about, but that shouldn't be confused with text complexity. That doesn't mean that kids have to always be reading hard things that need to be read and reread. So when there's that language out there, it's really careful to see. You have Tim Shanahan coming on Friday, who has an amazing blog, and he talks about Common Core all the time, and he covers that in one of his blogs. So check out that, who has it on the tip of their, I am kind of a Tim Shanahan geek, but I don't remember the title of his blog. Shanahan Blogs or something like that. Google it. It's worth it, and it's very down to earth.
Shanahan on literacy.
Shanahan on literacy. So lucky that he is coming, I think.
Right.
The last resource I'll show, and I think my time is up, is this one. This is another one of my babies. I don't know how I get into this because I'm not the techie tech person, but www.ccrmichigan.org. CCR stands for Career and College Ready. This is a website that I put together to try to take resources that we have on our crazy Michigan Department of Ed website, which is getting an overhaul very, very slowly. So we have this website right now that would take some of those resources and pull them around this notion of career and college readiness. And it's evolving. We added the parents tab because we thought there were things on there that would really be nice if parents could just go to it. Trying to minimize the clicks. But if you scroll down, here's that message about career and college ready. I gave you those 4 attributes. They're here, just with more language I can't memorize. But those 4 pieces of what we really want kids to be ready about. This website down at the bottom actually comes to my inbox, and it's just for general questions. And then I farm them out to the person that can best answer them. So if you need support with that. And then this link goes right to my office's webpage. And we can click on it in a minute, but I want to show you up here. If you go, for example, to effective instruction and you hit standards, it takes you to all of the standards documents that we have, whether it's technology or language. And once you click on it, these go to Common Core's page because those are our standards. But the other ones will click you to the quickest way to get there, whether it's right to the PDF or right to a site where you can click on the grade level. So that's a nice way if you want MDE resource. It's just organized a little differently. And the other one, you'll find the Michigan E-Library on here. I'm sure you all know my good friend Deb Biggs-Thomas and Mel. So we have those linked right on here too, as well as the More portal. I'll go back to home. And this one, this is the work that we do. Our office, luckily, is very cross-office. We do work with the office that works with EL students. We work with the assessment office. We work with the public school academies office. And this is just our messaging around the Common Core and career and college readiness. And are there any other questions you have for me? All right, I will pass out those QR codes, and I think we have any other bingo winners? All right, I think I have a winner chicken dinner then. Thank you very much, and if you need my information or you want to give me your information so I can contact you, I'll be here till the end of the session so we can catch up after.
The Orion Public Library serves an area about, what, 2 miles? Yeah, ish, about 2 miles in diameter. We have been doing what we call Think Link for several years. I think that's going to be on here. The data start, maybe.
Yes.
But it's a K-12 collaboration, and we have 7 elementaries, 5 media specialists that share those 7 buildings, 3 middle schools, each having their full-time media specialist, and then I'm at the high school. So we are lucky enough to maintain most of our buildings having a full-time media specialist who is certified. We have very good help in that matter from our district level. They are very supportive of having media specialists who are actually certified. Although I have to be honest, it's getting harder and harder to find. So if you know somebody who's wanting to get in the profession, tell them there are still jobs available. Because we have trouble sometimes getting someone to fill jobs. So.
And hi, I'm Kristen. I'm a youth services librarian at the Orion Library, and I'm a public librarian. I was a teacher before I had kids, so I remember being a classroom teacher and never even thinking of the public library because I was just so busy. And then when I became a public librarian, I walked around and went, look at all this stuff, and it's all free. I wish I had used this back when I was a teacher. So a big passion for me is making sure that people in the schools get a chance to use our resources from the public library and know about them and get them easily. So since Melissa and I, we're both, full-time in the, down in the trenches librarians, we want to talk a little bit about what the school public library partnership looks like for our community in the actual day-to-day happenings. So in 2006 is when my boss, my former boss, Claire Pointer, she's now at Rochester Hills Public Library. Shout out to Claire Pointer. Anyway, so she came up with this idea that she wanted to collaborate more with the schools to make sure that that school library and public library connection was a lot stronger. So the whole idea was to make sure that we were working together because as librarians we all have basically the same goal. So to the schools, so one of the good things that the schools were like, yay, this totally is a great idea. So if you're at a public library and you're pitching to schools, there's some things for you. If you're a school librarian, these are some things you'll be thinking, yay, this would be good for me. When the schools use our public library resources, you have more access to the resources for all the databases that we pay for. It's okay. Because we want our students to be lifelong learners, having this partnership means that those kids will hopefully use the library even after school is done. And of course, building up the academic achievement, that's, of course, it was really easy to pitch to the schools. This partnership will help raise your scores, which is what every school and every superintendent wants to hear. And we even said we wanted to make sure, too, that those textbooks for those kids were available after school. I have a parent, Melissa is the media specialist for my daughter, and I really like knowing that if she ever comes home and says, oh, I forgot it at school, guess what? The public library has a copy of that textbook, and they're open till 9. So to the public library, It increases our visibility, which is huge. Making sure that the public knows that we at the public library is a vital connection with public education. So when we're going for the bond and asking taxpayers for more money, that's a really important thing to bring up in their eyes. Like I said, for bond people, for any of you who are like thinking about going for a bond in the next couple of years and thinking how shaky that could be, this is a great way to say, hey, look at our value. And it expands the public library to more than just the people who use the library in the first place. All those kids, I love going into the elementary schools and telling all the kids about the things we have at the public library, and then telling them how much money will it cost you. Show me 0 with your fingers. So that $0, all this is free, and the kids are like, it's free! And then they go home and tell their parents, bring me to the library. This is one of the big things that's worked for our community. We call our connection Think Link. And these bins have been a big visible piece of what we do. So these are the blue bins that are sitting in my library right now. There's one for every school. At every media center in every school, there is a corresponding blue bins. Now, we are all about doing this on the cheap because we're public libraries, school libraries. No one has any funding. So these are blue bins from the these are USPS bins that we got. We spray painted them blue, and most of it is run by volunteers. All the back and forth are just parents who have kids in that school. So these magical blue bins work this way. Teachers in their classroom think, I really wish I had a resource on whatever. Or media specialists go, I've just been cleaned out of these resources. I need more on whatever. Like that whole week in September when everyone's doing the Constitution, and you're like, I wish I had more stuff on that. So media specialists and teachers email the librarian at the public library. Please send to me whatever you've got. At the public library, I have time to go through and find books, but also DVDs or magazines, magazine articles, great database resources. Anything that's physical that I've got in my library, I can check out to that teacher or media specialist and put it in the blue Think Link bin that's at my library. Once a week, we have a parent volunteer who all that parent does is takes the blue bin from my library to the school, and whatever is in that blue bin at the school brings it back to the library. So then, at the media center, once a week, things show up that the teachers wanted. So then there's right there delivered to them at the media center. Teachers and media specialists use them there. And when they're done, they just put them back in the blue bin, and they're magically returned to the library. So all of those people who are thinking, wow, I'd really like to get over to the library, but I can't, this is the way that the library can come to you, and it costs like nothing. Are there any questions about this? Yeah.
How is the checkout process
How
handled?
we check out the items to the teacher or the librarian on their teacher or librarian card. So that, yeah, teachers and librarians are responsible. So that is kind of a thing. If you're checking out, a bunch of books and you're thinking, great, these are going to be in my classroom or my library, and I don't want them, that is the responsibility of the person who's checking them out. But at least it gets them into their hands without them having to actually come into our building, which can be an issue sometimes. We have special teacher cards. These, so for teachers, we wanted to make it easy for teachers to get what they need. These are renewed yearly through the human resources over at the schools gives us a list of everyone who's on staff. Teacher cards get a longer checkout period. Rather than 3 weeks for most materials, a lot of our teachers have said, well, can we have them for a month? Well, yes. It was really great for us, for our public library, to think, what can we do to make sure that our teachers get what they need? So we have 6 weeks where you can check things out instead of just 3 weeks, so you don't have those overdue fines. You can have up to 30 items on a topic rather than just, usually we limit kids to having just 3 items per topic, so someone doesn't come in and take all the George Washington books. But teachers can have up to 30 items on a topic. And then so teacher library cards have been wonderful. But we also have library card applications that go directly to all of the students. Every kindergartner and every new student gets a library card application in their new student pack to kind of remind them to use the public library. We also are available, we come in for the new teacher orientation. So when the new teachers in September or the end of August come in for orientation, public librarians come in for half an hour and remind them these are all the great things of the library. We're also available for on-site staff in-service training. We had Professional Development Day in our district, and I was there doing an hour-long presentation for elementary teachers on some of the databases that they could find useful even for, kindergarten through second grade.
One thing, I don't know how many of you are school librarians, but one of the things that was kind of a sticking point at the very, very beginning is we had some media specialists that were worried that the public librarians were taking over, and that the district might think, well, if they're going to do all this stuff for us, then why are they going to need us? It doesn't work like that. Obviously, the public library can't be at all 11 buildings all at once, and they can't possibly have enough books for 7,000 students all at once. So it's an extra. It's on top of what we currently have, not just resource-wise, but personnel-wise. Our media specialists can't be at every single in-service giving presentations for every single teacher in our district all at the same time. They still do in-services. This is just like an extra resource. So it's, if anything, it's made our jobs even more into the light to our district of, oh, you guys do that and you guys do that, that's great, we have more. It in no way, shape, or form diminished what we do. In fact, it probably enhanced it.
Yeah. Because at the public library, we are all about supporting our school librarians and our media specialists, because, I mean, you do every day what my entire library staff does, plus you teach. So we have, huge respect for what school librarians do, and we're here to support. Like when I did the in-service, I talked about the databases that our public library pays for. So it's kind of nice, like, here are these resources, don't forget, these are your tax dollars already taken care of. So these are resources outside of the ones that the school already has. Yeah, so we're all about, teamwork and supporting each other. And for us, we want to, if I'm going to spend money in my budget to have an online database, I better make sure that people are using it so I can justify having it. So one way to get people to use it so I can justify having it is to promote it to the schools and get the school kids to use it. And then we also, it's the perfect venue to talk about our programs going on at the library. Every month we have a little newsletter that comes out, the Think Link newsletter. Hey, don't forget, we've got chess club at the library. We've got anime club for teens. So all of those programs at the public library that we're trying to draw kids into, the schools are the perfect way to promote those programs. I'm sorry about the whole zooming in things. Assignment alerts. This is one part that hasn't been working as well as we'd hoped. I'm sorry, I think that's me, I'm really popular. But the assignment alerts have been huge because for years and years we've had kids coming into the library at weekends and evenings and saying, my teacher says I have to find a book. And that's it. So as you're trying to draw out the students, so what kind of resources do you need? And the kids are like, oh. Having these assignment alerts online, we let teachers know if you have a research project coming up and you want students to work on it after school hours, please let us know exactly what the requirements are or what your students are looking for, because that way when those students come in, we'll say, oh, that's right, you're in Mrs. Middleton's class. She wants you to find narrative nonfiction. Here, I can help you, rather than just any book. She just said a book, right? And having those copies of the textbooks in the library. And parents love that too, because we can always say, we're open till 9 and we're open on weekends, so that whole, I left my science book in my locker doesn't fly. Our librarians, we try to come to the schools as much as we can to be visible, because the more connections we have with those students, the more hopefully they'll come into the library. So we're there for, when the parent-teacher conferences are there, we often have a table out in the hallway with, don't forget, we've got these resources at the library. So your teacher just told you, wow, your kid's really gifted. Because of course that's what every teacher is going to tell every parent about their student. Come to the library and here's some great things we've got going on and resources to help you now that you have this information. We come in and we can do book talks on different things. We come in and we do poetry lessons during April or new book talks, like what's new and hot in nonfiction. Well, public librarians have faster access to that than many of our school librarians, so we can come in and give those kind of book talks. And then when our Battle of the Books in our middle school was going on, our teen librarian participated as one of the judges in helping out with that. So in the future, we are hoping to somehow find a way to do some sort of shuttle. Because where we live in Lake Orion, if you don't have a car, you can't get anywhere. And our library is kind of located in a cute little neighborhood that is completely off the beaten path from everything. And one of the problems for kids after school, I mean, Melissa can only stay at the high school for so long. So those kids in the evenings and the weekends, how do we get them to the library? We're talking about somehow figuring out a way to do some sort of shuttle.
So much of what our kids do is online now, and our students who don't have computer access at home, I stay after school for an hour past my contract time, and I'm there a half an hour before my contract time, but it's still not enough for some of our kids who don't have computers at home and still need access, and I really hate kicking them out, but at the same time, I could be there all night if I did it. So I would love to be able to put them onto a shuttle to the library to say you can go there and use their computers, and they're open till 9. So that's, for the high school especially, that's like my next step thing for this Think Link is to get them from my building to the public library so that they can continue to work.
And as the public library, one thing we've been trying to figure out is if we can't actually find a way to get the kids to us, how can we get us out to the kids? So we've talked about also doing some sort of portable, buy an old ice cream truck where we've got the little hotspot for the wireless, and we've got the iPads or laptops, and we've got some popular collections where we can go out and, we're at the high school every Wednesday night from 5 until 9. So we're trying to figure out how we can do the portable public library that can come to schools on evenings and weekends.
Yes?
Who's responsible for those students if it's after hours, the school or the public library?
If they're, that's one thing we have to figure out. If those kids come on a shuttle to our public library, then they're on our property. We're the ones who are going to make sure that,
The public librarians are not responsible for
You're right.
people who come in through their doors, and schools are. So if a parent's going to call me and say, is my kid there, that's not my responsibility. Yes, we'll let him use the phone, but did he go down to Sugar Bear when he's supposed to be doing his homework? I don't have to answer questions like that, although the school does.
Absolutely. So, that would be one thing to consider. When kids come into our public library, we're not going to be responsible and say, aren't you supposed to be doing your homework, and you're here and you're checking in at 5 and you're here till 7. Yeah, you're right. When the kids come into the public library, they're a patron like any other patron. So there's that kind of responsibility that school librarians have a different consideration about that than we do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a consideration is to have, if you do something with that shuttle or something, is to have parent permission slips. Because if the parents give permission and sign off and, look into what you really need to say in there. Because I had done that with my public library. We actually had a public library locker in our school building, and they would deliver books, and so kids could go online and get public library books, and everyone was really concerned about, I worked at a middle school, and kids getting books that I wouldn't feel are appropriate for middle school level kids, ordering those from the public library, because you have a different mission at the public library.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did was I did parent permission slips for any student using those lockers.
I think you're still going to have issues with public librarians because our like you said, because our mission is different.
Right.
Anyone has a right to come through the doors of any public library
Right.
in the country, whereas schools are different.
I kind of see this as being, we don't have buses, like public transportation buses. I kind of see this as being similar. This is kind of, instead of it's just like a public transportation from the high school to the library, but then it's like you got there on a smart bus. So that's only the only thought I was thinking is.
Rather than permission slips, we need to have the parents know that once they come through the doors of our library, we're not responsible for what they're going to do.
I would consult your city attorney for sure, your township attorney, just to be sure.
that's a really good idea, to make sure that all those T's are crossed, is to consult the township attorney. Yeah, and that'd be good for anyone who's considering, yeah, how could we do that, to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for a situation where there's going to be that misunderstanding and parents expecting something that they're not going to be getting.
And then you at least have an opinion to fall back on. If that makes sense.
Cool. And of course, the whole idea of when the sweet peas come into the library, my teacher says I'm reading at a 3.8, and parents are sitting there saying, yep, 3.8. Were those books at the 3.8 level? And I'm in the public library going, welcome to the zone. Yes, that's one of our goals as well, is to start to see if we can build some reading lists that take into the whole idea of text complexity, so that when kids come in with a grade level expectation, we can guide them to, oh yes, that looks exactly like what my teacher was talking about. And then who needs to be involved? This is not just, Melissa and I, we're partners at CROG, we're like, we can do it. But in order to make all this successful, you've got to have everyone on board, from the top, from school superintendents and your library director, all the way down to the people who are actually getting their hands dirty, the librarians on the front line. So, if you have any questions, that's me and that's Melissa. So, great. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna jump in on something totally, completely not about this, but because it came up in the last presentation, I wanted to show you a resource that I think is absolutely amazing, and our staff has, I think it's just has really taken to the whole text complexity with nonfiction reading. This is a great, great site, because what it does is it takes news articles, and if you click on them, you can create like an assignment page for your students, or you can just have them come here, and you can change the lexile reading of it right here on the page. So right now it's at a 1010. We can take the exact same article down to a 720. So they're getting the same information, just at a different reading level for them. It's amazing, yes.
Can you just say the name of the site again?
Newsella.com.
Now, do they have multiple files that they use? Like
No, it's always the same ones.
what ones do they?
It's 720 through, hold on, let's go into one. Oh, no, I guess I lied, because this one's 660. So I guess these change depending on the article. It goes down to about 3rd grade and goes through high school level.
We have our teachers, like it's AR, and that's.
Don't get me started on AR.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I've been there with that, but that's kind of,
Yeah.
we don't really have it.
Not a fan. But this I am a fan of. And my high school teachers have really, really taken to this.
Great, thank you.
I'm Laura, this is Stuart, obviously. And Stuart and I have been working together in various ways for a few years now. And part of that came out of necessity. There are moments when I will think, hey, I wish I could, and I think, I bet Stuart could. And so that's kind of how this started. And there are resources that he has that I don't have, and resources that I have that he doesn't have. And so we tried to really partner those resources. We're going to show you just a bit of a slice of that today. And I think we've learned some things in the past probably 3 or 4 months that are going to guide where this is headed. And we're interested to hear maybe ideas you have as well. So it started years ago. One of the things that when I first met Stuart, the reason I met him was because we do school visits. We like to have our students hear about what the programming is for summer reading and those kind of things. So the very first encounter I had with a public librarian when I came to Kalamazoo was, hey, we'd love to come to your school and talk about our summer reading. And I said, the whole school? Yes, the whole school.
The whole school. Everyone.
Stuart said, but not at once. And so we scheduled these visits, and it really was informative for me because I came from a very small community where teen, and especially summer reading, but especially attention to teens really wasn't paid. And in Kalamazoo, there's a really intentional program that pays a lot of attention to tweens and teens. So I was really happy to have, before Stuart, he had, for 1 year, I had her, and then now every year, Stuart is out at the schools, kind of pushing and pulling and bringing summer reading. So fantastic stuff there, which is great. That was a start. But what's cool is now Stuart is a yes man, which is sweet, pretty much. We call him, and he is amazing. He will come to any event that we have. And I think you have other librarians in the teen department that do this at all the middle schools, am I correct?
Well, I'm actually the only librarian for the teen department, but we have librarians that we share with the children's department, and we sort of have like an integrated youth services department. So Amy and Andrea back there, they assist with going to schools. Also Jill, who's back there that Sue mentioned earlier, and another person who works in our department, Tammy. They assist us with doing what we need to do to get school visits done too. So.
Yeah. So every open house we do in March, all of our schools, K through 8, do what's called a literacy night. And every school has some sort of event that focuses around literacy. And we really feel like it's important to include our public library in that because they are truly, for us, a literacy partner. We have a 6th grade orientation. So he's really in our building several times a year. And I keep rallying him because his kids are districted to a different middle school, and I keep saying, don't worry, they can come to me. It's going to be exciting. Then you'll just live here. You'll never get away. But he has cool things. He has a teen advisory board. They do the Teen Filmmaker Festival. He has a anime club, a J-pop club. Those are areas of strength for him that aren't necessarily existent in my building just because of the different things that I do. He can tap into kids in different ways than I do. So making sure that information gets to our kids is extremely important, and having him in the building, I think, has drawn those kids out.
Well, I think the thing that's important for me, partnering with Maple Street, is that you guys have a captive audience. I mean, I can go there and I can say, look, we're doing all these things. You guys should come check this out. Whereas here, I mean, they come if they want to come or if they don't have something that else that they're doing. But when I go there, I get to see all of them, and they don't have a choice.
It's very exciting for them.
It is actually.
It is. It's good. The other thing that we are really focused on is summer reading promotion. So if you click on one of those.
Whoop. Oh.
So they have summer reading through the like most places do, and they have a great website for theirs. But if you scroll down, you can see one of the initiatives that KPS is really heavily involved with is we create reading lists for our students of fiction and nonfiction books that are related to our curriculum. So if you're a student rising from 6th grade into 7th grade, for example, in 7th grade there's a lot of world-based, they do the ancient Egypt, ancient China, so on. So we, on our summer reading list, put those books. But, yes.
Those are created by school people?
They are created by the school people, yes. So Patsy and her counterparts at the elementary, and then myself, and then Annie Kaskinen, who's one of our high school librarians, get together and whoop it up and create summer reading lists. And these summer reading lists, they're updated and refreshed every year. And our goal, the reason we get together and do them is we have a goal of 0 overlap. So you don't see the same book on 2 lists, because that way there's way more variety. So the parents that come in and say, my kid isn't really reading at the 4th grade level, could we perhaps have a 5th grade, then they get a new list, you know what I mean? And so we do new lists each year, and those then are posted here, so that Stuart isn't out of the loop when kids come or parents come and say, I would like all the books on this list to read because I'm a champion. Those are available. So it's a really important,
There we go.
So that's what they look like. They're annotated bibliographies, like I said, fiction and nonfiction both, and they are integrated to our curriculum. So it's a really important project, I think, and to be able to make sure that they're in the loop on that.
Right.
And I sort of have this vision that at some point we'll be creating those lists together as well, or at least consulting on them, because we'll get into this a little bit later, he has reading strengths that are different than mine. So it's really important, I think, that he's maybe involved in that, or at least his department as well. So kind of a cool thing that we're linked there. I like that. And it gets our kids in and looking at his stuff. Yeah.
Do you, you said you do one like for elementary?
Every grade has one.
Every
K
grade.
through, every grade. So kindergartners get, and they actually are mailed home with their end of the year paperwork and report cards as well.
And they're on the Kalamazoo Public Schools website as well.
So those lists are everywhere, and we do them every year. Yep.
And like Laura said, when we get the lists from KPS, then we go in and we check and see, oh, we don't have that one yet, we better order a few copies of that, and so we'll then pick it up to make sure that we have it to supplement what they have.
I was just gonna say that, in case you forgot, but also that we also write down, we take that list and then write down in all our desks, this is in J, you know, and the call number, this is J, you know, so that if we're really busy, we can say to a parent, I will come check on you, but you can take this, and this is where they all are in the collection, so it's really easy. We get asked for them constantly.
Yep.
I'm in the children's department, so.
And yes,
Are the kids required to read a certain number, or it's just recommended?
it's a recommended reading list. We don't have any requirements, but we hope that the kids are, if, what we think happens, we don't know. Our kids, there's also a cool initiative where they get books mailed home to them. So they get 9 or 10 books over the summer of their choice mailed home. It's kind of about their reading level.
3 grades.
3 grades, okay. So, but what we're hoping from these lists, or at least what I hope, is that if there are people who are stuck and don't know what to do, there's a resource. If there are people who are looking for what's next and they're not sure what to do, if there are people who have kind of these reluctant kids, so it hits all different types of people by saying, here's some recommendations to get you started. I've tried different things. There's so little space on the paper. we fight all the time. We're like, well, if we shrunk it down a little bit more, who needs a magnifying glass? Because I love the idea that if I put a series on there, it gives me 6 books for my buck, you know. But we really are intentional about the books we put on the list because we feel like it's important, and we know that there's some at least decent chance that people are really taking the opportunity to look at the list. And if you're curious about those, they're right on the website, so that's kind of a cool. You can go look and see what we have there.
And the thing that we like about getting these lists is that we look and see, okay, what are we missing out of this list? But then we can also sort of supplement with the other materials that we have in our collections, other books, DVDs, you know, other materials that audiobooks, even some of the databases that we have in our collection. It's things that may not necessarily be in their collection, but we can sort of say, you know, okay, so you've done this book. What do you think? You know, maybe you might want to check this one out too. So it's pretty easy.
And it's cool, I think, for parents who are looking at the list when you know, a lot of times parents have great intention. I mean, I'm a parent too. We have great intentions when we take our kids to the library, but a lot of times they don't know where things are or how things work. So if they can find one, then like if their kid is just really into whatever, all of their friends live right there on the shelf next to them. So it's a good learning experience too to get them kind of focused on what, you know, where their kids are. That's an initiative we've worked on. The next slide I have here, it goes to information sharing. And this is where things start to ramp up. So this summer, well actually this spring, I was talking a little bit to my principal, and he was saying, you know, what kind of things do you do in the summer for kids for reading? And I thought, well, the public library does a lot for reading, and we in our building have sort of targeted kids and sent home books with them. We try different initiatives. And so I was talking to a colleague of mine, and I said, you know, what is it that we could do for our kids that would keep them connected all summer? Never ask yourself these questions. And so then I called Stuart and I said, hey, we were wanting to meet with you and talk a little bit about what we could do for the kids in the summer. So I came here and he went to the school, and we were in 2 different places, and then we did finally get together. That was a crazy meeting where he thought he was coming to me, I thought he was coming there. And Jill actually joined that meeting as well. And one of the things that we were working on at the school level at the time was a distance learning program, and I have a roundtable on that on Friday. We wanted to do distance learning with our students for the summer and just make an attempt to try to learn with them in a different way. But we felt like distance learning was too, we couldn't just set them free and go, okay, go learn online, we'll talk to you. We wanted to have some kind of general time when we met up and talked to them and touch base, see what's going on, whatever. And that's sort of where Stuart came in, because we knew that we weren't sure how many kids would sign up, but we knew that no matter what happened, we needed a place to meet with them. And the public library seemed like an obvious place. This is a very centralized area for us. You can get a bus here. Your parents can drop you off. There's a great park across the street. So it seemed like a good idea.
Right. And obviously we have good facilities. I mean, we're in a big meeting room. We have smaller spaces down in the teen area is accommodating. So it just sort of seems like a natural space to like kind of meet. Obviously, if school's not going to be in session, but there's definitely ways that you can get here. And not only that, we have a lot of programs and things that we're running all summer long, which we'll get into in just a second.
So what happened then was I said, well, what have you got going on that we could partner with? And Jill, Magic Jill, pulled up their text from their summer newsletter. And so from that, we wanted to meet with the kids 4 times. We chose 3 events that we were sure we could partner here, and then the 4th randomly happened on a Saturday, actually at one of the churches on the square, just because we wanted to do something different. And there was nothing that weekend. So the first event we came to was a knots event. We brought 28 kids up here to the Van Dusen room. This is a guy from our local nature center, and he did knots, and it was a survival guide for knots. And it was, at the time, we were like, that's 2 weeks out from our start date, we're picking that event. That was really the only thought that went into it. I was like, thanks for the calendar, Stuart, we're good. This was amazing. The kind of program that goes on in public libraries and what they have the flexibility and the space and the money to do is great. There was all this paracord everywhere, and he taught the kids, he's teaching the kids like a trick to untie themselves, but they had like tying like a tie, like how to do this so you can get a good date. That's a survival skill. How to carry wood out of the, I have tons of pictures, but they're from my phone, so they're average. How to carry wood out of the woods, how to like make a shelter for a tent. And it's cool, like we have urban kids, so these are not necessarily skills that they would see or get other places. So it was really fun, and there was so much interactivity, and it was just great.
And yet they've all read Hunger Games, and so they want to know, like, how do I do these cool things that Katniss gets to do in the book? So there's one of them.
We taught them. And then we had the second meeting, or I should say, I think the third meeting was the Kinetic Effect meeting. If you have not seen Kinetic Effect, you need to Google them and you need to meet them. They are 2 men who, from 2 totally different walks of life, and they both have kind of, sort of bootstrap stories. And they do spoken word poetry, and they're fantastic, and they really speak to the kids. Our kids, they didn't want to leave that night. They were here, and they were so tuned in, and it was just, and we couldn't, as a school, we can't afford their programming, to bring them in and work with our kids necessarily, unless we can get some grant money. But Stuart, through his summer budget, was able to get them in, and they were just fantastic. And then the last one down there, our last meetup, we brought them for Walter D. Myers. And part of the summer learning program, we had them all read KIC. So all of our kids had already read a book, communicated with us on Edmodo. We had, at all of our meetups, said, hey, how's it going? Where are you at? What have you learned? What are your questions? Did all kinds of literacy-type activities with them through the technology format. But then they had this awesome chance to meet an author, which is kind of cool, who's coming this summer. So it was really neat for them to be able to do that. And so these kinds of things all came from that one conversation where we sat down and said, so we're having this distance learning thing, but we want to meet up with the kids. What could we do?
And it was as easy as us putting together our program list for the summer, which we do way ahead of time anyway. And I sent it to Laura, and that was as easy as it got.
If you go back one, what that is all of my students received this backpack with the book. Everyone 6 through 8 received this backpack with the KIC book, and then the front page of this was all summer reading resources for kids and parents. So it was a QR code that led them to the Sync audiobooks. If you're not familiar, it's like the free audiobooks that they have all summer, and it's classics paired with like sort of new things. So there was a QR code to that. There were recommendations for parents on places they might go. There was, and then if you flipped back, it was all the summer programming information that was happening at the public library. And then the third thing that was in there was sort of a reading log for the kids, just to kind of keep track. Hey, I read this summer, and I wanted you to know, kind of thing. And some of them brought them to me, which was kind of cool. A lot of them said, I just gave that to the public library. But it was cool that everybody received that. So every kid had this opportunity to have that information at their fingertips, even if we have a very transient population, they hadn't received the really fantastic KPL newsletter, or they didn't know what was happening. This was their opportunity.
Right, because everybody in Kalamazoo gets mailed the KPL newsletter, regardless of whether they're going to Kalamazoo Public Schools or not. But doing this was a way to actually make sure that it got into their hands specifically. I mean, because you know, if that KPL link newsletter comes in the mail, maybe their parents look at it, maybe it goes right in the recycling, we don't know. But at least this way, we know that it's definitely, at some point, it was definitely in their hands. And they could sort of take note of what we were doing for them.
And it's cool now, Stuart just mails that to me. He knows I want it. And we have limited space in our newsletter, but I try to put highlights into our school newsletter that link those things together now to make sure parents know what's coming and what's happening. So that's kind of a cool thing that he does, which I really appreciate, because then I know what's happening too. So we also are fortunate enough to get really cool author visits as a partnership. Stuart and I have really worked together on, there's a huge planning committee, not just us, for this Teen Lit seminar, which you can see in your folder. There's a list of who the guests have been. It's kind of like the who's who of awesome, crazy Teen Lit people come to Kalamazoo. And so Stuart, he brings them to schools and you can have them come visit your kids. How cool is that? So we've had Sharon Flake, Sharon Draper, Holly Black last week. We had Allie Condi come visit. We really ramped this up in the school. We had 100 kids read Match by Allie Condi. We did lunchtime book clubs, after-school book clubs, and moto book clubs. So we had all these 100 kids reading this book with the intention then of having the author come from the public library. And then there was an evening at the public library and getting this opportunity to really meet someone that, I mean, I had kids like, who's coming? Are you serious? They were really excited. And it was a cool thing that, again, schools on their own can't possibly.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, for us, it's like we were already going to do an evening program here, but, you know, taking Allie Condi to the school, that doubled the number of faces that she gets to see and that they get to see her. So it's kind of a win-win for both of us.
So that's kind of the excitement there. When I saw that picture, I was like, ooh, somebody needs to get those books out of boxes. That's working well there. So that's a cool thing, and I love the idea that my kids can kind of have that experience. Stuart and I are big connected through social media. I was just laughing with him about this because when you mentioned your program, so I'm sitting at SLJ Summit in Austin a few weeks ago on a Saturday, and I hear the Nashville Public Library and it's talking about, they have it, it's called Limitless Libraries, and they basically do the same thing that you do, but for all of the city of Nashville, which is crazy. And I sent him a message, I think at that point, and I was like, hey, this is cool, have you heard about this? What do you think of it? And so when you brought it up, I was like, that's funny. But these are tweets from ALA this summer. We had just sat down and had a discussion about new adult literature. Anybody new adult?
New adult?
New adult? Yeah, new adult is like sort of for that 20-something crowd. So it's literature that's moving out of the teen but not quite into adult. Lots of self-pub. And so I was sitting in a session about new adult while Stuart was sitting in a different session. He's like, no, they have to not call it that. And so we had this sort of back and forth about how funny that was. But then also, I was sitting at the Best Books, and he was sitting in another session on new adult, so that transition. And so I said to him, hey, I'm at Best Books for Young Adults. He's like, hey, I need to see your notes. You know, I'm at this. Isn't that so relevant to what we're talking about for the youth literature seminar? So this idea that we're connecting back and forth, even though I'm not going to be in his space necessarily, or he's not going to be in my space, we have lots of opportunities through social media to just bring things back and forth at each other. Did you see this? Have you heard about this? Have you read this? I think it's really a really good idea for librarians to be connected that way.
Yeah, and there's oftentimes seminars and conferences and things like that that Laura gets to go to that I wouldn't necessarily have gone. But I'll see her, you know, posting a tweet about, oh, hey, here's this cool idea that we just caught at this conference. I'll say, oh, that's a great idea. That's, you know, something I never would have picked up on had I not been connected in that way. So definitely use your social media.
And beyond that, we're also connected on Goodreads.
Goodreads, yay!
I think this is a great way to connect with your school public librarian. And I don't know how this happened, but it just meant, like, somehow we found each, I don't even remember, it's been a few years now. But this goes back to the who reads what discussion and how you select and what do you know that the kids are reading. Because Stuart is the exact opposite reader that I am. Together we make one librarian.
One perfect librarian.
And if I need something on graphic novels, I know his Goodreads list is the place to go. You know, if he needs something on pretty much all the kissing,
right,
I'm the place
right.
to go.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a teenage like 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl at heart. So it is
well,
good.
and it makes sense because I'm a a 13-year-old boy at heart, so
Okay.
we're perfect for each other.
It makes sense. So this has just been a simple thing. Like I get an email a couple times a week, and I just look and be like, that's what Stuart's reading. And if I feel like it's something I need to read, I hit my to-read list with it. And if I feel like, I'm probably not going to read that, but if I need to go back and reference, his lists are there, which is fantastic. And I think it's just, it's like a small thing that's a big thing when you're one person trying to do the job of all the selection. It just has made sense for me to be connected to him in that way, and I really haven't. I think it's interesting to see what he's reading and what he's purchasing. Really, it makes a difference for me. So the results of this partnership, we have studied this for the first time this summer. From Maple Street, we had 102 students, which is 14% of our population, participate in summer reading. That's an increase of 13% from 2012 to 2013. We feel like that's probably directly correlated to really putting it in their faces and dragging them here. That's how that comes about. There's nothing more that gets them here than giving them reasons to come. And so that's great that we have an increase. They track how many kids make it to what they call the first incentive. This was a 15-day incentive where they got a free book, which I think is a great prize, by the way. I think if we're going to incentivize, let's incentivize with something we want them to be doing. Reading, that's great. We had 55 students make it to that mark. That's an increase of 22%. Again, we brought them to the library. Okay, super important.
And something else. They actually, this year, we tried for the first time, the first 2 prize incentives were books. And the most amazing thing, and this is just something fun I want to share, is that you would say, well, your first prize is a book. And so many of the kids would go, yes! I get a free book! And then they would come back and would go, well, the second prize is also a book. And they go, no way! I get another free book! So it's just completely awesome to see that.
I think it's cool. Kids owning their own books is really powerful, and especially kids, underserved kids, huge. So another cool thing for me is that 100 students read Matched and Matt Alicandi. That is over 60 students more than Holly Black. We have 40 kids do Holly Black. And this year for last spring, lost my mind and said, let's go for it and order 100 copies. I could have ordered 100 more. I could have had 200 kids. I don't physically have the space in my library for 200 kids to sit there and be like, ah. But they were silent for an hour. I mean, she sat there and talked, and they were just, it was amazing. They really loved it. And I feel like that's a huge increase and a huge thing. And then the other thing, so we've been just looking at test scores from our distance learning kids. And there were a lot of people, we have a lot of talks in our staff about who we're serving with these summer programs. We have 4 summer programs in my building. We serve, it's called SOAR, into middle school. We have 6th graders come. This year we have 86 graders come and spend a week with us before middle school getting acclimated. We have a 7th and 8th grade, which is called Jumpstart. And we have 7th and 8th graders come and do programming for a week. We have what's called I3. That is a small group of our lowest percentage, or lowest achieving percentage boys only, who get to come for 2 weeks by themselves to like a really directed camp at school. And then we had our distance learners. And the distance learners, there's some things you have to think about. You have to kind of own technology or have technology accessible to you. And we had meetups, so transportation was an issue. We did offer bus tokens and those kind of things. But so those 2 things, our colleagues sort of questioned us and said, well, this feels like a hindrance and it might not serve everybody. And maybe it serves kids who, and their quote was, don't need to be served. And I thought, well, all kids need to be served. And I worked in all 4 programs this summer, so I have really a vision for, well, I worked with 3 of the 4. I only was the secretary for the 4th. But I have a vision that all kids need to be served, and in different ways. And so that's what this program did. And so we looked at the test scores of those quote-unquote gifted kids. And those are kids that only through our testing, our data, are in some way labeled as gifted. And we wanted to know, did this make a difference or have an impact, spring test to fall test? And so these gifted kids in our own school did experience summer slide. But in some cases, a large percentage. But the kids from our distance learning summer program experienced no summer slide, and in some cases gained. So we feel like that's a win for this program. We had over 40 kids participate actively. And so to think that those kids who maybe people think don't need service, actually do need service because they do experience slide, and we were able to stop that slide and actually experience some gains. Because we also did numeracy through that. I talk about the literacy with KIC, but They received nonfiction texts that were science and social studies based, and they also received really fun math instruction. We did all kinds of Michigan tourism things. So if you're going to have 1 tank of gas, how many miles can you go in this kind of car, and where will you get to, and what will you see there, and what, those kind of things. But it was all entirely math-based. And our idea was sneaky secret. Actually, we went to the MEAT test and looked at the areas where we were missing, and then we plugged those skills into our numeracy and literacy instruction. So just a sneaky sort of backdoor way that we did our teaching and learning online using those things. So we had gains with those kids, which we thought was great, and we had wonderful gains all across the board in that program. And again, it's a connection thing.
Yeah, and we obviously don't keep some of the data that they do, especially in terms of like demographics and like, some sensitive data just because of like privacy reasons. But we do notice that our numbers went up and our participation rates went up, especially for kids who like came back again and again and again. Obviously we can't say, well, it was definitely this that contributed to it, but I have no doubt that this is a part of it. Getting that information in front of them and sort of kind of driving them forcefully toward the library, I think really helped.
And so I think this is sort of a place where we're starting. I think this conversation for us continues. I've emailed them several times with questions, and I think it comes back, and every time we see each other, what do you think of this? And we said, even when we look at this data, we each have about 10 questions we want to investigate and that we're curious about. So it leads us into like, what's the next thing? What do we do next? How do we get you more into the school, get me more into the public, so that it's more of a partnership throughout the year, not just the summer, which I think summer is really important because, again, that summer slide issue, but all through the year, there's all kinds of things I think we could be doing together that we're going to continue to learn about as we start working more together.
And something, there was a slide earlier that showed the Teen Filmmaker Festival, and that's something that we do every year. And we have a sort of a collaboration with a different school that's kind of technology focused, and they have a film and video class where the teacher in that class has kind of contacted me, and we've kind of worked together to make sure that those kids in her class get their films into the festival. So it's, which hadn't really happened before, and it's just kind of like, the starting to build these conversations and these bridges between different schools, and sort of driving the kids toward the library, and also kind of going to the schools and saying, here's what we have, here's what we can do, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I think it's an important thing.
Because I've always said that we have the kids and you have the money. So if we
Some
can just
money.
figure out how to bring those together. So I did put a slide with our contact info in case you have questions, and of course we'll answer questions now. Really anything. We'll tell you all our secrets. We don't care.
Not all of them. Most of them.
Most of them. Questions? Yes.
Even for your 100 copies, did you get a grant for those, or did you?
I was wondering if anybody would ask any funding questions, because I just told you we have 4 summer camps and all kinds of things. So right now, my middle school is under a school improvement grant from the federal government.
Okay.
So we use our school improvement grant money for those books. In the past, I have received extremely serious support from administration. My principal, previous to this one, never said no to anything about books. The principal before that, when I was brand new, 8 years ago, it was a principal who'd been there 150 years, and embarrassingly enough, I over-ordered because I thought somebody would stop me. And there's a central office. I thought they would stop placing orders. I over-ordered by something like $2,000 my very first year here. Something that probably in a normal district they'd be like, you gotta go. She said to me, no worries, we'll cover that. There's always money for books. Now, she knows that I was really intentional in purchasing those. I'm not crazy. I purchased 100 copies, and 100 copies went to student hands. I told the teachers, if you would like a copy, BookBug has them. And maybe that was not nice of me, but I wanted those in student hands because that's what I said I was purchasing them for. And I haven't had a no on that because of it. Funding is tough, I agree. Because of the school improvement grant, we had a little more flexibility. Nobody gives out 800 copies of KIC to their kids in a backpack in the summer, just randomly. You know what I mean? But we were intentional with the kids. So not only did we bring our kids, but those I3, the boys I told you about, they were part of that visit with Walter D. Myers as well. So we were really intentional about trying to say, okay, not only are we giving this book, but we actually want you to read it, we want to talk about it, we want to meet up, we want to know what you think about it. So funding, I think, is always going to be an issue. That's where our money's coming from right now. I'm sure Dr. Rice knows where it's coming from after this. We'll ask him. Yes, Joe?
I want to say, for Women Rock Connecticut Back this summer, they are, they're run by a nonprofit board as well. They are extremely expensive to bring, but because of their nonprofit, I wrote a letter about how great we are at the library and how great it would be to have them perform. They're from Kalamazoo, so they have a great Kalamazoo home, and they ran it by their board, and they were like, yes, we will come to Kalamazoo. So it was because we had that partnership with them that we were able to bring them. And with Walter D. Myers, maybe Andrew should talk about how we brought it.
Yeah, I think it's important that we remember that different public libraries have different budgets because they're different sizes and they have different support from the community, and we all have to work with what we have. There's lots of things that can be done that don't cost a lot, and those are just as effective many times. And that I just wanted to make sure people know, like, we didn't pay anything for Walter D. Myers except for his like his lodging and stuff like that. We were able to get a grant through the Center for the Book, and that's just something we happened upon and applied for. And we've got more plans in the works for this summer. What can we apply for? How can we get money? So even a huge, a big library like Kalamazoo, we still are looking for that because we're trying to make every dollar go as far as it can.
Right.
Because we have so many kids in this community that we can serve. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to look for those opportunities and remember that there's a lot of things out there. So
And-
you know me if you have questions about where we find this stuff, we can tell you.
And at the same time, too, I mean, we talked about, like, you guys bought 100 copies of Matched. I mean, we don't have, like, an infinite book budget here, but I was still able to buy, like, 80 copies for our collection, which is, again, a supplement to the copies that they bought. So, utilize your public library.
Yeah. I feel like if there was something going on, let's say I had money for an author visit but not books, or, which I can't imagine that actually happening, but if I lucked into something crazy like that, the first person I would call would be Stuart and say, like, look, we've got this situation where I need supplemental materials, my budget is just really tight, is there a way we can work this together? Because there's feast and famine everywhere. Like I said, right now, we've had some really cool things happening, and they did cost money. But we're talking about, okay, this still all exists. Like, his programming still all exists, even if I don't have extra money to pay staff members to be a part of a summer program. So how can I link my kids in without paying staff? Because really that was the expensive part, aside from obviously 800 backpacks and books and stuff. Paying the staff to be a part of that was expensive. But I feel like that's huge. I mean, the kids will tell you, like, they come to me all the time now, they're my kids. And school librarians getting kids to be your kids, that's huge. Yeah.
I was just gonna say on the other side of that, like, we are gonna do programs anyways, because we're the public
Right,
library, and that's what we do over the summer. So then, if we can do a targeted program with the school, that's great for us, then we know people are gonna come. So then we can spend our funds and our resources on something that's really gonna work well for some targeted people in our community, and that just makes us, it's a win for us too,
Right.
so.
And our book budget, our book budget exists no matter what you guys are doing. And I would have bought 86 copies of Matched no matter what anyway, and Walter Dean
I
Myers.
just would have checked them all out. For
Sure.
my
When Walter Dean Myers came, I saw, hey, we've got a few copies of these titles missing. I better restock everything. And I bought every single copy of every book that I could get my hands on,
Right.
sort of.
Because we want to push the kids, like they read Kick, but that doesn't mean that he's written, 102 books he told us
Right.
or something? So we want to make sure they know there's more.
Yeah.
So it's just, a lot of things come out of conversation more than anything, and that's what I was saying with the social media and the email and the tweeting each other, whatever. A lot of the things that we've done have just come out of conversation and out of necessity. When someone says to me, hey, what could you do for summer reading? That's like, game on. Let me see what I can do. I accept the challenge, and I think it's really important. The students at Maple Street, they really, and all the KPS students, they really deserve as much as we can give them in terms of literacy, and we're trying as hard as we can to connect them to the coolest free resources we can, and our public library just happens to be that in this community. It's really lots of opportunity. So I feel very fortunate.
I do too. I feel very fortunate that we have people in the schools like Laura that are willing to work with us and kind of promote us, and we're totally happy to help out on their end too. So.
Pretty cool.
Does anybody have any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. I just wondered if you don't already have this relationship with somebody,
Right.
what are your tips? I mean, obviously you guys like each other, and that's wonderful. So maybe it was easy to get to know each other, but you obviously put some intention to it. So what are your tips for that?
And actually, I don't think it was easy for me at all.
Oh,
I'm glad that you see that, but I actually was like, I would say to people, Patsy can affirm this, I would say to people, how do you think I can get in with Stuart? How am I going to get to know him? Because I felt like,
Call me up.
right, I felt like there was something there that I needed and he had. And so, and I'm not at all shy, that's, I think, part of that. But initially I just called him and emailed him, and I would show up down on the teen floor and peek into his office, and not like pestering or stalking, but that's a whole other workshop. But this idea that he had what I needed, and I feel like we as teachers, librarians, as both public and school, I feel like if there's something out there that you have a need for and you know somebody else has it, then we have to work toward figuring out how to get it. And like I said, I started just calling him, hey, could you come for this? Hey, could you come for that? It's a weird situation right now where my husband is a resource specialist in the building where I work. So now he calls Stuart for stuff. And in fact, he was like, there's too much going on in our building today, but he's like, hey, I'd like to come see that and see what you guys are talking about in terms of community partnerships, because that's part of his job. So he started to sort of communicate that way as well. And it just really, for me, was a matter of reaching out and just making the decision that he had something I wanted, and I was going to figure out how to get it in there.
Right, and the flip side, I mean, I am by nature kind of a shy and introverted person, and so like I wouldn't necessarily have reached out to Laura, but there was this need. It's like, well, we've got to get into the schools, and like, how do we start doing that? So you just have to sometimes you have to pick up the phone and call your librarian and say, hey, what do we do? And
there's a cool thing where there's a teacher in my building who happens to know Stuart from back, and he's got like a comic book graphic novel. It's really cool. And he was working with a student who was being bullied and having some trouble. And Stuart came in and drew with the kid. And
Right, I've got an
cool
art
things.
background, so.
Yeah, and it was really cool. And when I saw that he was doing that, that made me think even more, wait, there's more we could be doing here. There's more possibility. Stuart has layers to him. And things, I didn't know him from any, really, he just came to work, and I came to work. And so when I saw that too, I was like, hey, Kimberly, I've got, she came and showed me what he had done, and I was like, oh, he's in so much trouble. So, yeah, just a matter of reaching out, I think. It's really,
Yeah, and can I add to that? I strongly encourage public librarians to perhaps be the ones to make that first step, just because I know when I think of everything, if whoever is a school librarian or media specialist, when I think of that you're running an entire library by yourself and you're teaching, holy moly. So really, public librarians, I really hope we all reach out to all of our school media specialists.
Yeah, and I really, on to that note, I really feel fortunate that I have somebody as sort of dynamic as Laura, because I've reached out to other library people in the school system, and some of them I've gotten to work with, and some of them hasn't quite connected yet, but it really kind of clicked with Laura, and so for that I'm very grateful.
Kathy?
I just wanted to say that because a lot of school librarians are being cut, there is this fear on their part that you're going to want them in and do their job.
Stuart absolutely does not want
Oh,
to
my God, no.
If you reach out to school librarians,
Right.
if you start with the summer programming,
Yeah.
because that is something we want our kids to read over the summer, and we can't be open all summer. In fact, last year I asked my principal if I could check out books for the kids all summer long, and she did not let me check my books out over the summer. So I reached out to my mother's library, and I did a book exchange where kids brought in books, and then I went to the Friends of the Library sale and got 50-cent books, and then the public librarian brought books too. And I targeted, I knew who were my at-risk kids, and they didn't participate in the book exchange, but they all got a ticket for a free book. And so anyway, starting with that summer program stuff though, now I know them, and now I'll do more things with them.
Yeah.
But it was starting out that non-threatening summer
Right.
program.
And we need that summer link. I think that's a brilliant way to start.
So
Yeah.
that might be the way to start.
We had another question down in front.
I just wanted to say too that I'm a public librarian, And we have I'm gonna commend you all, because we have a fantastic relationship with our schools in our area. And my idea is that we're serving the same individuals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our role should be the same as our school districts, and that is to involve our students, get our parents and our families involved. And our summer reading program, what we actually do, I'm the one who actually does it, our summer schools, the schools that are having summer school, we actually take our summer reading program to them, because they're doing reading, they're participating in that, they're doing it every day. And to make sure that those underserved students actually participate in the reading program, we know that if they're with their school in summer school, they're going to finish the program and they're going to be actively involved. So I think, again, as you stated, I can't remember your name on the purple. Oh, sorry. You know, I hold that. I hold us more accountable as public librarians in reaching out to our school, our schools.
With CIS, I think, right? They get summer reading
Yes.
brought to them.
Yep.
Yeah, our Communities in Schools program is similar. It's not summer school, but it's a programming that goes on all summer,
Right.
and they automatically get summer reading cards as part of that
Right.
programming, which I thought I didn't know that happened, and I was like, oh, you are brilliant. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good questions again.
All right, good session. Thanks, Laura and Stuart. It was good. So, Patsy Richardson and I are going to take a few minutes here and wrap things up. We're going to talk a little bit about the collaboration that we have. Our roles are a little different from Stuart's and Laura's, although we're working in the same capacity. I'm the head of youth services here at Kalamazoo Public Library, so our department works with children and families from birth through high school. And Patsy's job, you want to tell?
My title is the Acquisitions and Cataloging Librarian for the district. So there are 25 schools in Kalamazoo Public Schools. 5 of them have librarians, and the rest have library assistants. So all of the books for all of the libraries come through my office, and then I select the books for the 14 elementary schools that do not have librarians. Laura helps me greatly. Well, I can't even say she helps me. Laura selects the books for the 3 middle schools that don't have librarians. There are 4 middle schools plus an alternative program at the middle school level. And Laura does that, and we work on that together. So I'm not in a building. I'm not working with students every day. I'm touching a lot of books. I'm working on the resource or the summer recommended reading lists and helping with more district-wide programs than actually being in a building.
Right, and I'm kind of doing the same thing, working system-wide on all of the things that we do here at KPL that involve kids. But we still collaborate, and Patsy, you had the great line about how we started collaborating.
And so we're the low tech, so if you were a little intimidated by Stuart and Laura's social media connection, we don't have a PowerPoint for you. We're not Facebook friends. It started with lunch, really. It started with lunch. We just realized that we needed to have a connection. We didn't even have a plan at that point. We didn't know what we wanted to do, except that we wanted to have lunch regularly so we could keep each other updated on what's going on in my world with school libraries, what's going on in her world with school libraries, and just look for those ways that emerge from that communication. We could do that together. Or, okay, Global Reading Challenge is coming up. We need to have those books in our libraries. So send me that list so that I can have those books in the libraries before the Global Reading Challenge starts. And I promise I won't tell anybody what those books are ahead of time. But really, it's just personal communication, having lunch.
And I think that underscores everything we've been talking about, that everyone's been talking about here today, is that you need to reach out and to find somebody in the other organization who will be your friend and who you can call with a question. So when I was starting to feel like I didn't know enough about Common Core, I called up Patsy and said, tell me about Common Core. So she said, all right, come on over and we'll talk about Common Core. So it's those kind of things. It's not that we're necessarily doing the program planning like Stuart and Laura are doing,
but we're making it possible for them to do some of those things in some ways. But that communication is just really critically important, and sometimes it just means calling somebody up cold and saying, hi, I work at the public library, and I'd love to get together and talk with you about ways that our professional lives may overlap and how we can work together better to support the kids in our community, because we serve the same kids. And it's both of our responsibilities, all of our responsibilities, to do the best we can for those kids.
And I'll be honest too, there were, when we first started our, it was, lunch, we would just get together. There were some times where we didn't have a whole lot to say to each other. And we would, how are you doing? How are things going? What are you reading? And it would be easy to say, oh boy, that was just, boy, I felt so uncomfortable and awkward, like I had nothing to offer in that conversation. But then to say, okay, but we're going to get together next month too, and we're going to do this again, and we're going to just keep looking for those areas. So if it's not easy, that doesn't mean give up. It just means just keep trying, just keep the door open. It's okay if it's not comfortable immediately. Just keep working on it.
And we always have books to talk about.
Yes, so there's that.
So there are just a couple things that we want to point out, ways that we collaborate. And one of the things that I really love is the school district publishes a monthly newsletter called the Excelsior. It's terrific, and it's delivered to every home in the school district. It just comes in the mailbox. But what we've been able to do, working with our marketing and communications office here at the library, is we buy the back page of the Excelsior as an ad every month. And so this whole back page is library programs for the coming month. So this is one more way that we're marketing our programs, and this is all of our programs from babies on up through high school, to the families in the school district. So we love this. And I will say that I particularly love this issue because the picture, we've got a stack of photos of kids at the library that our marketing people just pull from. And when this one came in the mail, I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, those are my grandkids. I was really happy to see their little faces on the back of this. So, but this is nothing that Patsy and I collaborate on, but it's something that, because we have a really good, strong relationship with our public school system, that we're able to do. And I have to say, looking back, I've been at the public library here for many, many years, and this is the strongest collaboration we've ever had with Kalamazoo Public Schools in the last number of years here. We have leadership at Kalamazoo Public Schools that understands what we do and respects what we do and wants to work with us. And so we've been able to initiate in the last number of years some really terrific programs together. And that comes because KPS, the leadership at KPS is ready to do that and puts in the hard work on their end so we can put in the hard work on our end. So it's good.
And I feel like you should probably talk about those a little bit more. We are really fortunate that we have Dr. Rice and Dr. Shakir Khan and administrators at Kalamazoo Public Schools that value the public library. And there are some great programs that they are doing that has nothing to do with student. We didn't create that, but these projects are really wonderful, and you should talk about those.
Well, one of the things we've been able to do for the last 3 years is first grade visits. And I know that a lot of library systems, public library systems, do this with kids oftentimes in kindergarten or first grade. But we are able to bring all of our first graders to the public library 3 times during their first grade year. And so they come twice in the fall, and they all get library cards, every single one of them. And we make a really, really big deal about that, about presenting them with their public library card. And they have a story time, and they choose a book to take home, and they learn how to check a book out at the public library. And then they get back in their bus, and they go back to school. And then a month or so later, they get back on their buses, and they come back to the library again. And they bring their books back, they learn how to return their books, they hear more stories, they choose another book to take back to school, and back they go. And then in the fall, in the spring, they make their 3rd visit, and they come usually during May, and we celebrate a year of first grade reading, and they check out another book, and they hear more stories, and we tell them how exciting summer reading will be, and then off they go back to school. And that's been a fun program to do, not without its challenges. It's a challenge to move all of those children, 1,100 and some this year, I think is our number, back and forth. So transportation is a huge cost, and it doesn't always go as smoothly as we would like it to do. But we get to see those first graders 3 times during the year, and that's a really special thing. In fact, there's one little girl somewhere, she must be in 3rd grade this year, who refuses, her mother says, to take her library card out of her school backpack, because she just knows that any day they're going to put her on a bus and they're going to take her to the public library, and she wants to be ready. So her library card lives in her school backpack just for those days when they bring her down here to see us. We also collaborate on a program called Global Reading Challenge, which is our version of Battle of the Books. And that's a program we do with 4th and 5th graders. And we are in and out. It means that when we're doing the Global Reading Challenge, we're in and out of all of our elementary schools to do those programs. And so they do the school level challenge at the beginning in their schools, and then for their remaining levels of the challenge, they are in our buildings. But that's another good collaboration that we have, working closely with the schools, the school librarians, the library assistants, and a whole raft of parent volunteers as well. So that's another good collaboration. Laura and Stuart talked about the reading lists, and so those are very good. And we always, in the first few days of summer reading, have lots and lots of mamas coming in the library with their reading list clutched in their hand, because they came with their kids' report cards, and they come into the public library looking for those lists. And so those are a good resource for us to be able to share with parents and to point them to those books in our collections.
And before I started working in school libraries, I did a couple of internships or experiences in public libraries. And so I get it. I know what it's like to be on the public library side, and the kids come to you with the list of books, and you're like, what? Why did we not know that you guys wanted these? If we knew ahead of time, we would have prepared for this. Or why did we not know that the Egypt unit is going on right now, and 1,200 kids are going to come looking for Egypt books? So I think it's so important for us to let, as much as we can, to let the public library know what's going on, so they're not shocked.
And sometimes the importance of our collaboration is not even on programs or kids. Sometimes it's on facilities management type issues.
Bed bugs were an issue at one point this year, and not in our libraries. It's okay, Laura. It's gone. It's past. But, this issue came up, this question. I was like, what do I do? Bed bugs in school libraries and library books. How do I handle this? And I knew that Kalamazoo Public Library had dealt with it, and I said, okay, Sue's my person. I call Sue. Sue, we're a little concerned. What do I need to know? And she put me in touch with a facilities person here who taught me more about bed bugs than I ever needed to know. But I know where I can go, or if there's a technical issue, like we're implementing a new security system, an RFID security system in a couple of libraries, I have no idea how to do that. So I call Sue and I say, Sue, I know you guys use RFID. Who can I talk to just to learn a little bit more about what we're getting ourselves into? And that has been so helpful to have somebody to ask, because as librarians, we know that information gap, when you hit that point where you know you need to know something but you don't know where to turn, okay, I've got a person to turn to who can at least point me in a direction and funnel my question.
And I think that's especially helpful for large systems, a large library system and a large school system, is that you don't always know who might be the person at the other organization if it's a big organization. So, but somebody over there knows, and so Patsy always knows. So, we make it work. And as she said, it started with lunch. Patsy was new to the school system. I called her up and I just wanted to introduce myself, and it just went from there. And now we never run out of things to talk about when we have lunch.
No, and we have lunch during the summertime, and we just make sure that we just stay in communication. That just feels like the biggest piece of it is just staying in communication.
Yeah. So find your person, embrace that person, ask them many questions, and they will make your lives easier. Yeah.
One other thing that we have, that it's just a small thing that we haven't mentioned, is that we have a link to Kalamazoo Public Library's website on our page, and they have a link to our library catalog because our library catalog is online. They have that on their page. So that's just another small way that we make sure that we share that information between the two places.
And Laura, you'd mentioned Communities in Schools summer program, but we also do that with KPS Summer School. So we've got a reading game. We create a version of our summer reading game that goes to the summer school program. And so during the weeks that those kids are in session in the summer, they're working on a version of our summer reading game that can transfer over to the regular summer game. So it's an easy thing for us to do, but supports summer school curriculum. All right. Thanks
Thank you
everyone
so
for
much.
attending, and enjoy the rest of your conference.